Well, good morning and welcome to another week on my allotment. And I think it's about the 12th week now that our daughter's been living with us, and she came home when the RAF said work from home, and she's been with us now for 3 months, and she's got one more week with us. They're calling her back to work the week after this week coming. So that'll be 13 weeks, and the reason I mention that is that sort of gauges for how long this has been going on. So it's been lovely having her. It's been different. It's meant I've got to get involved in her videos to a certain degree. So yeah, it's been a long time, hasn't it? And it doesn't seem any end in sight. I don't think they've changed any. I don't really know, because I don't pay much attention and I don't watch the news anymore, which I think will become a permanent feature for me. I am so fed up with the BBC, their lack of journalistic integrity, just reporting the government propaganda, not drilling down into the numbers, not really testing the politicians and questioning the policies. Not only are they not questioning anything, they are just repeating the mantras. Anyway, so I think that will stay with me. I can't see me going back to the BBC. They've lost all credibility with me over this fiasco. Anyway, that's a side issue. More importantly, back to my plot, which is the one steady feature through all this, as well as my work, I guess. And talking of steady and reliable, I'm here on a Sunday morning watching the sunrise, and it's superb. I've walked up and down the plot several times. I would not be surprised if blight is on the way, because there's a real muggy, damp feel to the atmosphere today. I don't do any of this. There are websites you can subscribe to that send you blight warnings. I don't do any of that. I mean, what are you meant to do if you get a blight warning? I don't know. But yeah, there's a real muggy feeling. It's very still. I'm sure that will change, because another constant feature at the moment are the winds. I mean, we had winds here this week where John and I normally sort of talk across this scruffy plot, but we've had to get a bit closer, which neither of us mind. I don't think either of us have got any time for this silly distancing stuff. But yeah, we couldn't hear each other speak, and you had to brace yourself. Anyway, so what am I doing on the plot today? Well, one larger job I've got to do. It's a long time since I turned my compost heaps, or my compost heap. I've got about 7 bays down there, and one of them's growing the giant Atlantic, or the Atlantic giant pumpkin, as part of the site competition. One other has got a zucchini courgette growing in it, and then one other is what I use to put all my waste on, which is the running compost heap. So I've only, out of all those bays, I've got one that's being used as a compost heap, and it's a long time since I turned it, quite a few weeks. So I ought to do that today. That's always a labour intensive job, but it's a necessary one. So I shall do that at some point today. It's a rare thing. I feel on top of everything. Obviously there's weeds around, and I shall get the hoe out again today for a couple of hours. And of course, where I've laid all the chippings and I've put the cardboard up against the edge of the beds, inevitably I've got a little bit of grass that manages to force its way past the cardboard. And so routinely, whenever I come up here, a part of, if I'm here for 2 hours, maybe 15 minutes of that, I'll go around with a container, and I'll pull out the grass as much as I can. I sometimes even pull back the cardboard, get the whole grass clump, roots and all, and then lay it all back down. But I shall do a bit more of that today because, you know, I don't want to see that happening. So yeah, it's just a routine day. I might harvest some more rhubarb. Our rhubarb up here, all across the site, has taken a bit of a hit. First of all, the whole site was flooded for months. And then as soon as the rain stopped, the ground baked, and we haven't had rain for 3 months. Now, I have occasionally dropped a whole watering can on each plant of rhubarb, but not very often. And inevitably, it really has suffered for that. However, since I last saw you, we've had a real good soak up here. We had an absolute downpour. So uniquely, I shan't be watering today. And as I've mentioned before, I think the watering's been getting me down a bit. It's just relentless. And I know, because I've spoke to other plot holders up here, that I'm doing too much of it. And yet, despite knowing I'm doing too much, I can't stop myself. You know, I think, well, peas are thirsty plants. Courgettes are thirsty plants. And of course, some of them are growing in compost heaps and raised beds. So they're up out of the ground, they need a bit of water. And then I think, well, the squashes, they're you know, and before you know it, you're watering the whole blooming plot. Anyway, I'm getting that wrong, I'm sure. Something I've got to learn. I was talking to one of the ladies from over the other side, and she said she put her broad beans in 2 or 3 months ago when this dry spell started. She watered them in when she put them in the ground, and she's not watered them since, and they look fantastic. So, you know, and I water my broad beans every week. So clearly I'm getting that wrong. So something I need to think about and work on perhaps, because the sheer time and effort, even with that cart that John so generously lends everybody, it's still an onerous task. So I've got a mouth like a zookeeper's boot. So I'm going to make myself a brew, and then I'm going to talk a load of cock and bull, which some people might say I'm already talking. Bearing in mind it's 7 minutes to 5 on a Sunday morning, and I'm talking to a camera on my own in the middle of a field. Right, let's get that Bunsen burner on. So, as I get my first brew of the day on, as promised, I'm going to talk a load of cock and bull. And of course, I'm not sure if that phrase or saying has travelled abroad. I don't know, but it's a common one here in Blighty. But, you know, somebody's talking a load of rubbish, or the story that they're exaggerating, or the story they're telling is of doubtful origin. People just say, oh, he's talking a load of cock and bull. Well, that originates from the 17th and 18th centuries, in the days of the coaches travelling north and south and east and west across England. And there's a village called Stony Stratford, or a town, and it sits halfway between Bristol and London, and Oxford and Cambridge, going east to west. And it was strategically positioned for the coaches that were travelling those routes, and because it was halfway, it was ideal as a stopover, because that journey wouldn't be done with one set of horses, or maybe it was done over 2 days. And so there were 2 coaching inns in the high street of Stony Stratford. One was the Bull and one was the Cock. And of course, people travelling up from London were keen to pass on the news of the day, and people coming from Bristol and the north were obviously likewise wanting to take stories back down to London. And so, you know, that as they arrived at the Cock at one end of the high street, by the time the stories and the tales got to the other end of the high street, to the Bull, they'd been exaggerated and built upon, and you know, but were very often completely unlike the stories that were told originally. And so that saying came into being, that if people were telling exaggerated or untrue stories, people would say they were talking cock and bull. I think that's a lovely saying, and you know, it has everything it needs. They're good words. It has history. It's threaded through the culture of the UK. It's a wonderful saying, cock and bull. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one. Kelly kettle's a bit slow today. Normally we've got some... here we go, here we go. So what we want to see, a few flames coming out the top. The light is fantastic. I think we might still get a bit of rain today, and I'm very happy if we do. It's just an absolute joy that I haven't got to go and get that cart and pull that to and fro. I'm so pleased about that. There we go. That's not really heating the water, is it? It's up here. I just, you know, oh, fantastic. Every home should have one. Who needs a kettle when you've got one of these? Might keep the fire service a little busier, mightn't it? Fantastic. Well, the greenhouse is a lot emptier, but still productive. The Shirley tomatoes are doing well. I've chopped off the lower leaves so that the sunlight can get through to the maturing and ripening fruit. I've potted up some basil, which we'll start to use in our smoothies. Some more basil there that I don't need. And then the successional sowings of lettuce, more lettuce, and then spring onions. And I'm also sowing radish every week, which is in small pots in the back garden. But what I wanted to show you was these two cucumber plants. And I'm sure most of you know how to side shoot and cut out the side shoots of a tomato. But here we have the side shoot on a cucumber plant. I'm growing these two cucumbers vertically, and you can see here they're starting to produce some fruit, but they're in pots, so they can only produce so many cucumbers, and all these side shoots will make a massive plant, and they just cannot sustain that amount of growth. So again, just as with a tomato plant, the side shoots on a cucumber grow at the leaf axil. So that's coming out. And then there's another one there. And you can see that they are growing small cucumbers, and it just can't sustain that amount of growth. There's another one. Yeah, good. Oh, and there's another one at the back. You really have got to keep your eye on it. So all that growth is taking energy away from the plant, growing up the main cordon.
Another style. Ooh. Wish there was an easier way.
lunch spot. That'll do me. As the sun breaks free of the horizon, I've pulled the EnviroMesh back off some of the Brassicas to have a look, and they all look very healthy. I have to say, because obviously the ground is very wet, everything's wet from the heavy rainfall. It was very predictable. I found a number of slugs, and they have been dispatched, shall we say. And I found them right inside the cauliflowers, sitting near the curds. So, is that what they're called? The cauliflower heads? I don't know. However, I'm sure you can see there, the broccoli is forming. It's a thing of beauty. Yeah, I mean, they all look wonderfully healthy. And as I come round to this line of cauliflower, I've folded over the inner leaves to protect them, although the slugs have got inside there. But you can see that the cauliflower heads are forming. There. Very happy with that. So what I've got to do is I pick off, you can see those yellowing leaves there at the bottom. They're not doing the plant any good, and they're just providing an environment for slugs to thrive. So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes pulling off all those lower brown leaves, putting the hoe between the rows and thoroughly de-weeding it, and then I shall put the EnviroMesh back on and they can carry on. And at some point in the not too distant future, I'm going to pick some of these, because I mean, that broccoli, that could be picked today quite happily. But I think it's got a few more days in it. Yeah, very happy. So, let's get to work and tidy it up. Well, I forgot to mention when I said what I'm going to be doing today, but I've got these 8 pumpkin plants. I grew a second, or had a second sowing, really just as a backup, because the plants didn't look good when I initially put the first lot in. And the first lot aren't yet taking off, but they're holding their own. You know, I've talked about transplant shock, and you know, they're still recovering from it, and these have been hardened off every day for a week outside the greenhouse, and they're ready to go in. I don't really have room for them. If those, I don't know how many I've got down there, 8 or 10 pumpkin, they're Charmant, if they take off and they produce, I don't need these. I just can't bring myself to throw them away. And I've asked around the site and nobody seems to want any. Obviously, you know, we have to provide 5 pumpkins per plot to the farm shop as part of the land share contract. I've got 2 plots, so I need to provide 10. But of course, because everyone knows they've got to provide them, they tend to grow the plants. So yeah, I shall pop these in the ground in amongst all the others, and they can all fight for space as far as I'm concerned, and you know, they succeed or they don't. But yeah, I've got to get these in the ground today. Well, sun's up, it's rather overcast, but there's still no wind, so I can do a little bit of filming on the plot. And I just wanted to show you, and before I say anything else, I can't take any credit for this. I saw this on Cliff's channel, Castle Hill Gardening, and it's a great little tip, and just a piece of stiff wire, and make a shepherd's crook of it. And he, being a perfectionist, puts a little bit of garden hose on it to protect the plant. But as these butternut squash grow, they will attempt to escape. If you remember from last year, they just ran amok and they left the bed and went across the site. But I'm going to try and contain them this year, and as the leaders grow, I'm going to pin them, put them where I want. I'm going to get them to grow in a large circle on this bed, and I'm going to pin the leaders down using these pins, and hopefully then I'll have one large circle and I'll be able to step in the middle and water and weed, etc. We shall see. Nice idea. But anyway, it's these pins. I'm going to pin a couple of the leaders now. So I'm going to attempt to do this one-handed, and as you can see, this leader is heading for the fence, and that's not what I want. So using this pin and being as gentle as I can, there, and as this grows, so I will bring it round with all the others and I'll loop them past each other, and hopefully I'll have some semblance of control over my butternuts. The problem with that, of course, is you've got to be here regularly. And what happened last year is, if I was away from the plot for 4 days when we got the caravan in, you come back and they've gone through the wire and they're, you know, a foot across the path. But it's an aspiration, we'll see. You can see there's one down there that's heading for the fence, so I'll pin that one as well. Well, what you're looking at there, as if you don't already know, is a couple of calendulas, just to give my plot a little bit of colour. It's a pretty feeble attempt, but they're growing, and you can see there's a flower developing. And these 3 Market Moor Ridge outdoor cucumbers, and the experiment this year is to grow them up that frame. In theory, the cucumbers will hang underneath and I'll be able to cut them easily. We shall see, but they're going the right way, which is a result. And here I have another 3 that, again, like the butternuts, they're starting to lead away, and using the same wire system I shall pin those sort of diagonally across that bare soil. And up in the celery trays I've got 2 more cucumbers, so I think I'll go and get those and plant them up now. Well, if I can speak over the sound of the crows on the golf driving range, these are the French climbing beans, and they're doing as their name suggests, and I'm very happy with that. And these other rows were planted later, but you know, they're catching up, so they'll enjoy a day off the wind. And talking of wind, these alderman peas, there's some real weight to that frame now, and you can see I've put in a side rope just to brace it in each direction, because it doesn't have to take a battering. But they're starting to swell up now, which is all rather exciting. Yeah, I mean, I've picked a bad example there, but there are some that are thicker than that. But it's lovely to come up here and walk over and see how it's progressing. And then on the end here, if you remember, there's 2 cucumber plants, La Diva. These are the ones that didn't germinate particularly well. And here I am wandering around, and you see that? I've got a caterpillar eating on the peas. I'm loath to kill a caterpillar. In fact, I'm going to relocate that. Anyone know what that is? It's actually got a piece of the leaf in its mouth. Cheeky what's it? Yeah, I've no idea what that is. But it's going over there in the grass. Yeah, and these are the sweet pea. So where was I? Yes, the cucumber La Diva, which I had poor germination with, and I suspect that was my fault. Sarah Raven raves about La Diva, if you look on YouTube. But I'm going to grow that up the side of this frame. So here we've got alderman pea, cucumber la diva and the sweet pea. And in fact, as I'm talking, there's another caterpillar, and that harks back. So over you go. I'm going to have a good look now. So clearly there's something been laying its eggs on my sweet peas and perhaps the peas. So I'm going to have a wander around, and that's why I think it's important to take the time, get a brew in your hand and walk the site, because it gives you an opportunity to look closely at your crops. And there's no need for spraying anything nasty. You just got to walk around and remove the pests, assuming that is a pest, of course, as you see them. And here we are, that's a better example. You see how that one's filling up. It's a thing of beauty. In fact, that's almost ready, I reckon. Soon be time. Yes. So, pea alderman. Well, Barry's just arrived on the plot. It's 20 to 7, so he's regular as clockwork. Good to see him. And that leads me nicely into the big news with the Atlantic giant pumpkin. I'll have to zoom you in a bit, but can you see that? That is a pumpkin. Woohoo! Now, quite how I grow it when it's going across onto the courgette plant, I'm not sure, but I now have a pumpkin on the plant. Bring the competition on. Well, needless to say, it's raining. And I'm very happy about it. There are a couple of ladies up here. And they don't have, obviously they don't have the shelter I've got. So one of them's actually working in the rain, good for her, and I think the other one's gone home. In fact, the second one's going home now as well. But a little bit of rain's not stopping me. Well, it is actually, I'm having a cup of tea. I'm going to have a cup of tea and I'm going to watch my water butts fill up. I'm going to watch all my plants get a nice good drink, and then I'm going to go back out and carry on cutting all the lower leaves off the tomato plants, because I've got so many up here. Unlike the ones in the greenhouse at home, they don't quite get the attention, and I've had a look at them this morning and they're all growing the leaders out of the leaf axils, so they all need cutting out, which is what I was doing when it started raining. So I'm going to have a brew, sit down and watch the rain. It won't last long, I'm sure, and when it stops I'll go back out, and if it doesn't stop I'll go back out. Brew time. It really means it now. Okay, well, it's your classic summer day, heavy rain interspersed with glorious hot spells. So I'm using one of the hot spells and dry to have a look at the plot, and I've planted those 8 extra pumpkins Charmant in amongst the others, and I planted a couple of them over here amongst the butternut squash. These courgettes are producing nicely. Not quite sure how they're going to fare when they go over the edge of the tub and whether they'll snap under the weight of courgettes, but we'll see. I pointed out that the Atlantic giant is starting to produce fruit. I have now turned my working compost heap, and I've been cutting off the lower leaves of the tomatoes, and I've cut a load of comfrey and nettles, and I've stuck those all in the working compost heap. I've picked some beetroot today. The runner beans, Benchmaster, are making their way up the arch, and perhaps you can see where I've cut the lower leaves off, and they're looking a lot better. Let's hope we don't get blight with all this warm, humid weather. And everything's growing well. Let's walk a little different way. Haven't weeded in that brassica bed today. I might do that now if it stays dry. All these butternut squashes look okay. The leek bed over there looks good, and where these gooseberries were and they died, I've replaced them with the gooseberries I dug out that were still alive and some spare leeks I had, so the ground's being used. The sweet peas need tying into the frame so they grow vertically instead of along the ground. I've just picked some strawberries and raspberries. And this brassica bed, I now have some maturing plants, which is really good news. So, right now, everything's looking wonderful. The water butts have just had a bit of a slight refill from that heavy rain. All the plants will really enjoy that. And here's my pickings today. Courgette, beetroot, strawberries and raspberries. What I didn't realise was me telling you all my raspberries have died. I forgot about this one on the back here. I was meant to be fan training that, but took my eye off the ball. But that's raspberry canes. So all is not lost. I am now picking raspberries. Well, the sun really has come out now. It's quite hot. It's mid-afternoon. I'm going to go home, do a bit in the garden, make a nice change. So, thank you for watching. Thanks if you've subscribed. I appreciate it. And I will be back next weekend. 3rd of July the campsite's open. No, 4th of July. Saturday the 4th of July. And we will be on a campsite on Saturday the 4th of July. So stay off the roads because there'll be caravans everywhere. It'll be a nightmare. That's if we can get out of Wales, of course, because Wales doesn't seem to be opening anything up. Anyway, that's in the future. I will be back next weekend. So, all being well, I shall see you then. Take care, look after yourselves. Bye for now.